In certain situations, we'll be able to work with edges or borders that don't have an image inside of them. But what about those cases, like here, where I have this photograph which was captured with Type 55 film, and I like the edge that's part of this film process, and I like this portrait, but what I want to do is I want to add this edge to this other portrait over here just to see how it would look. How can we combine this with this? Well, what we need to do first is probably zoom out, press Command or Control minus to do so. Then let's free transform this by pressing Command or Control T and then simply rotate that. And all that I want to do here is just position this over the other image and then press Enter or Return. Next step, we'll zoom in so we can start to focus in on the task at hand. Now, one of the things that we want to do is we want to mask away all of the person here in the center of the frame. So I'm going to start off by grabbing my marquee tool. I'm going to make a selection which is actually inside of the frame. I don't want to go all the way to that edge. And then we'll click on the Add Layer Mask icon. Now here we have the exact opposite of what we want. So we'll click on Invert to bring that back the other way. Alright, well, so far so good. We can start to see how we could bring this on top of the image. Let's grab our Move tool, see if we want to reposition this just to change the overall composition. Alright, well, that's looking good. Let's zoom in a little bit further. Okay, well, there's a problem over here on this side in that we can see some of the original image in the background. Well, one easy way to fix that would be to click in our color layer, go ahead and grab our marquee tool, highlight that, and then we'll click on the Add Layer Mask icon. That's the exact opposite of what we want. No big deal. Press Command or Control I or Invert. And basically what we were doing there is just masking that area out so that that wasn't a problem anymore. Alright, well, back to the edge. Well, up top with this edge, it's starting to look okay, except there are a few little problems. One is the edge is too harsh, so we'll click in the layer mask. We'll increase the feather amount. That will just diffuse this edge out a little bit there, so it's a little bit less perfect. Next, we'll grab our brush tool. We'll go ahead and paint with black here, and I'm going to paint with black at a lower opacity. And all that I want to do is just start to soften this up. I want to remove this, and I also want to do this with a little bit of a careless brush stroke. In other words, I don't want it to be perfect, so I want to have my brush strokes a little bit off here. So I'm going to go ahead and paint back and forth. Notice that I have a lower opacity, so it's starting to build up some nice transparency around the edge, so I can start to see through that a little bit. All right, so far so good. That's looking nice. Again, just taking out the majority of that edge there and trying to do so in a way that starts to bring this together a little bit. Well, we need to do more work on that edge, and we need to do some work on our color. So let's go ahead and first work on the color. Once we get this edge just a little bit better here, so I just need to go through and just remove a few of these little pieces. All right, next up, let's go ahead and click in the color layer. Then we'll click on our adjustment layer icon and we'll choose black and white. Here we may want to modify this black and white conversion just so it looks nice and good. And I'll just make a few little adjustments there. Alright, so far so good. Next, let's click in our mask. What we want to do here is grab our brush tool. We want to lower the opacity way down. We want to start to paint through some of this edge. We want to do that so that we can start to see some of this in the background. Notice how I'm bringing in that line across to that edge of the film. I'm going to do a little bit over here as well. And I'm just painting with black because I want to bring some of that original image through this area. And as we do that, it will connect with that background image a little bit better. And these are all small little brush strokes, but nonetheless important brush strokes because they start to build that connection between these different elements. And that will help build up this overall edge so that it looks much better and that it connects with that background there much stronger. Alright, well, so far so good. I think we're going in a nice direction there, just bringing in those. And what we can do now is go back and click on our image, unlink these two layers, grab the Move tool, and then we can move this around. And you'll notice that as I move it, it still has that nice transparency. We can see a little bit of this over here and also a little bit of that over there. We then will go back to our mask and grab our brush and just paint away any other area that we think needs a little bit more work. I'll go ahead and press 3 on the keyboard to go to 30% opacity to remove a little bit more of this area. And again, we're just trying to get nice blending here so that this blends in really nicely with that overall edge. Now another thing that we can do, which is pretty fun, is you can actually duplicate this layer by pressing Command or Control J. You can then click and drag the layer mask to the trash icon. Here we want to delete that altogether. Next, we'll grab our marquee tool. And we're going to make a marquee selection this time of this outer edge here. and so that it goes all the way to that perimeter edge. Next, we'll hold down Option or Alt, and then we're going to go ahead and click and drag inside of this area to remove him so that we can create a mask which just is that little edge there. So you can see all that I have selected is the translucent area of this border or edge. Here we'll click on the Add Layer Mask icon. Well, what we have here is a nice strong version of that. And with this version, we're going to take the blending mode to soft light. That will then just build that up so we again have a little bit more of the edge, but also have that nice transparency in the mix as well. Lower the opacity till you get it exactly where you want it. All right, well, this is looking good. Last thing I want to do here is I want to add a little bit of a color effect. So I'm going to go up to color balance, add a little bit of red, and also some yellows there. And then I'll duplicate this layer and take this layer blending mode to soft light. That's going to really boost my contrast and overall color saturation. And then I'll lower the opacity of these two layers until I have just the right mix to kind of connect this all together. Finally, I'll go down to my color image here and move this around until I get it exactly where I want it. I think it's kind of nice having this perhaps over there a little bit to the left. All right, well, we've made some good progress here. The last thing that I want to do with this image is I'm going to go ahead and click on my top layer, and then I'm going to grab my marquee tool. With the marquee tool, I'm going to make a selection, and I'm going to make a selection just around this edge here. And sometimes it's fun to experiment with removing some of the edge. And let me show you how we'll do this. We'll click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose solid color. Here we're going to click on white and then click OK. Next, because this mask is inverted, we'll target the mask and press Command I. And in this case, you can see that we now have this much closer or tighter crop. And occasionally what you'll discover when working with edges is that sometimes you may want to include the entire edge. Other times, it's fun to experiment with what would happen if we were to crop out part of that edge. We can then go even further. Press Command or Control T and you can free transform this, and you can bring back more and more of that edge until you get it exactly where you want it. You can change the overall look and feel, and I think that looks really nice, opening that up a bit more. Then press Enter or Return. And the great thing about this technique here is that essentially what we're doing is we're cropping, but we're cropping without losing any information. If ever we want to bring back the entire edge, we'll just turn off that layer and it will all come back here. All right, well, there you have it. A pretty interesting technique that we can use, which will combine an edge effect from another photograph to a completely different image. And we're able to accomplish this by using masking and then by hand painting in our mask at different opacities in order to get these two images to blend together the most effective way.